Annette, over to you.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. And Dr. Morea, as you said, has provided a really lovely background to what I want to share today. And so what I just want to briefly take you through is some of the areas that we've been focusing on in researching how we can better understand and prevent eye injuries, but also how we can manage them and ensure better outcomes. So these are some brief disclosures. So what I want to talk about is eye injury registers, past, present and future. So the first and most important question is why we collect data. And if we don't understand the answer to that, we're not going to be able to collect the data. Then I want to talk about how we can do that, and then give some examples of what we've done in the past in terms of eye injury registries, and just a little bit of a look into the future and what we might do next. So certainly looking at the complexity of ocular trauma, I think we all know and we're all aware that eye injuries are often an orphan discipline. And I think this very recent paper that was published in Lancet, which talks about global eye health and vision beyond 2020, for me is quite an interesting paper. It highlights not only all of the diseases, but all of the other potential biological determinants. And you can see that trauma features in all three later stages of life. So things like this are very important because they bring the question of trauma to the front, and it helps us to be able to promote the need to do better in terms of trauma. So as I said at the beginning, if we're going to collect data, we need to make sure that the effort and the reward are balanced, and we need to really understand why we're collecting the data, because there's no point in collecting data if we don't have a clear sense of what our outcome is and what we're trying to achieve. So for me, the reward in this is about reduced incidence as well as improved outcomes from trauma. So through better management and treatment of trauma, we're likely to improve the outcomes, but also with the right data, we can reduce the incidence of outcomes. And I think one of the introductory comments was total repair is the best repair. And in my mind, no repair is the best repair, because we don't want to have the eye injury from the beginning. So I just have two brief examples, one relating to detergent pods. So these little pods are often used in dishwashers, and children were getting a hold of these and bursting them, and they would end up with quite severe chemical burns as a result. So this was a clear example where data was used in collaboration with government organisations to try and have better labelling on products. The other example related to some foam that people were using and spraying, and there's all sorts of celebrations and things that people do around those celebrations and the sorts of products they use. And I know Diwali and Holi, these are other festivals where people are using products that can potentially end up with trauma or eye irritation. And as a result of this being publicised quite widely in Israel, they were able to minimise within a year the use of the foam, so that from 1 year to the next they had a reduction. So using the data and using the media, they were able to educate people about this. So there's definitely a number of things that we can do and a number of ways that we can use data to be able to prevent, and this hierarchy of needs talks about how we can best approach. And if you think about the example of fireworks, which I'll talk about a little more in a moment, if we can eliminate things from sale, then this is the gold standard. So this is the way that we're going to reduce injuries completely. But in some contexts, it's very difficult to eliminate them altogether. So we should look at alternatives, or we should look at restrictions, we should look at education, and then the last line of defence is some kind of personal protective equipment. So again, this is just ways that we can use data to effectively prevent injuries from happening. If you look at some work that we did, Rupesh and some other colleagues and I, we looked at eye injury registries that have been used in the past and tried to understand what the success factors are. And as you can see from this table, the US eye injury registry features quite highly. And in fact, many of the other registries have used the US EIR as the basis. But certainly with our research and from our understanding of past eye injuries, US Eye Injury Registry was the most successful in terms of the data that was provided and the publications that we used that were successful in preparing and presenting different interventions. So if we look at what's happening now, many of you are probably already aware of the collaboration that's happening between many of the societies that are present today. And that collaboration, iGates, is a registry for us to try and help collect data across a wide spectrum of countries. And so as we heard from the first speaker, certainly the different sorts of eye injuries will change depending on the geography, the sorts of activities that people are doing. And the best way for us to get a good understanding of that is to have a uniform registry that we can collect data on using the same terminology, the same basis for data collection. It's the only way that we can really get a clear understanding more globally. So using iGates 2 years ago, we collected data around fireworks. So we used that to try and get a better picture of where eye injuries were happening from fireworks, and the picture that we clearly got, and I'm sure many of you are aware from an Indian perspective that around Diwali, this is a key time that things happen. But also in countries like the Netherlands, where they have a lot of eye injuries around New Year's Eve, and in Argentina. So many of these other countries will allow fireworks for a very short period of time. And if you see the spike in eye injuries that happen in the Netherlands and Argentina, it's very much around New Year's Eve, as opposed to what we have in India. And of course, many would be aware of Chinese New Year and the use of fireworks. So it's really important. And again, understanding exactly when and where these injuries happen enables us to go and have a conversation with government and legislators so we can look to prevent these eye injuries. So this is just a really brief summary of the data that we gathered relating to eye injuries from fireworks. And similar to other studies, we found children, bystanders and males were often most affected. I think the thing about fireworks, and again, many of you are already aware, is the devastating loss of vision that happens. It's one of the most severe vision losses that we see in any type of eye injury. So in terms of where we might go next and what the future looks like, some of the things that we're currently working on, we have a survey currently looking at terminology. Now already with the ocular trauma score and the Birmingham, the BETS terminology system, we have a very successful, very widely used set of terminology. But we know that there's some limitations. And one of the key limitations is that those definitions really are limited to injuries to the eye. They don't include the true broader definition of ophthalmic trauma, which is not just the globe, but everything around the globe, the adnexa and the lids, etc. So for us, trying to, in some of the initiatives that we're undertaking, we're trying to gain a better standard of data collection, a more uniform set of data collection, and a wider definition. So in doing so, we feel like we can get a better handle on exactly the sorts of injuries that are happening to do those things that we said we want to do in terms of reducing the number of injuries, but also managing and treating them more successfully. So this graphic helps you to understand in terms of the current eye terminology system, they're really limited to the injuries to the globe, and what we're looking to do is to try and broaden that. So we have adnexal injuries, which, as you're all aware, can have significant consequences to the final visual outcome for the person. So shortly we'll be launching iGates 2, which is the revised version based on our learnings from the first lot of data that we collected, is trying to use a system of data collection that will enable us to more systematically collect data, but also trying to use big data and artificial intelligence to collect data more quickly and more easily. One of the things we're looking at is a schematic where you're able to draw and very quickly download a sense of what the injury is, and it translates that using an algorithm into all of the data that would previously be needed to be hand or manually collected. So it's really the opportunity to come together with a number of different groups that we're trying to establish. And already we have a large number of collaborators from India and many other parts of the world. But really for us, I think the power is in collaboration and our ability to collect data from a large number of groups. And ultimately for me, I feel like if we can get data more quickly, we'll be able to address the different types of injuries that are happening and more effectively intervene and prevent them where possible. So I'd like to acknowledge my collaborators, and of course Rupesh is here on the call with us, but also many of the different institutions that have contributed data, and APOTS for their support, and All India Ophthalmic Society and the organising committee. So thank you again.
Thank you,